It's first of all a great pleasure to be here at ABRAFATI, and it's also a great pleasure to be introduced by Antonio Carlos. Last time we saw each other is probably 7 or 8 years ago in an elevator in Wolfsburg, Germany, where we both went for a price negotiation with Volkswagen. And we both survived, but we're both in a different position right now, so I don't know what that means. It's a great pleasure to be here, and it's a great pleasure also to address the industry, because many things are happening in our field of paints and coatings, but as you will see around innovation and collaboration, I think collectively we can definitely do better. Let me just start a little bit by talking about my second most favorite topic, and that is the company AKZONOBEL. Because I was told I cannot talk about my wife in this meeting. The company is on a real journey. AKZONOBEL has been in paint since many, many years. I'll come back to that, more than 2 centuries. But it was until 2018, more or less a conglomerate that also had a big chemicals part in it. The company back then had a turnover of about 15 billion euros, and 1/3 of the company was the chemicals division. We took the decision in 2017 to separate from the chemicals division, and that was executed on time and in full by the middle of 2018. Since then, AKZONOBEL is a 100% focused paints and coatings company. We have 4 mottos in the company to get where we want to be. One is to have a passion for paint. It is important in our company that people who want to be successful and want to be successful for the customers have to have a passion for the product they sell. I'm pretty sure we all have experiences of going to a restaurant where the staff doesn't like food, and you notice it as soon as you sit at the table, and we want to avoid that. The second item was to try to get the company, now that we had the unique opportunity as a focused paints and coatings company, to have the company really look at the processes it needed and that are the most appropriate for a paints and coatings company. We call that internally precise processes. And that would deliver the powerful performance, not only in the commercial performance of the company, but also towards our customers and transparency to our suppliers. And last but not least, proud people. It's important also for a company that people find proud in what they do and what the purpose is of the products that they deliver to the customers day in, day out. Today, AKZONOBEL is almost a 10 billion euro paints and coatings company. It is firmly in the top 3 as largest paint companies in the world. You see some of the numbers here, and we basically have about 34,000 employees worldwide. It's also fair to say that amongst all the coatings companies, we believe we are the most global, because we're the most spread out around the world, both in Europe, the Americas, and in Asia. And we have some extremely strong brands and strong market positions. We are the #1 for decorative paints in Europe by far. We are the #1 for decorative paints in Africa by far. We are a strong #2 in the whole Asian region. We are the #1 for powder coatings. We are the #1 in marine and protective. We are the #1 in aerospace, etc. So with that comes a certain responsibility to try to shape the industry. It is a true pleasure to be here in Brazil and in Latin America as a whole. Daniel Campos and his team are doing a fantastic job to really make sure that our global toolbox that we have gets deployed in a very creative and enthusiastic way here in Brazil. In the total of South America, we have about more than 800 million euros of revenue. We have 12 production sites, 8 offices, and about 2,500 employees throughout the region. And the brand names are probably well known to some of you. On this continent, we span really the whole gamut from decorative paints to performance coatings. And to be honest, we are much more active, I would say, on the that part of Latin America that is east of the Andes Mountains, and we are eagerly looking if we should do something also at the other side. So a very strong organization here in Brazil and Argentina that really is driving the growth of the company and is continuously not only adapting global offerings, but is also driving and bringing offerings to the rest of the world. Let me talk about the real content of this meeting, and this is of this presentation, and this is really around the passion for paint, the innovation and the collaboration. AKZONOBEL was founded in 1792. In fact, there are some precursors that go further in history. But it is founded in 1792. It was founded as a paints company, and it is after more than 200 years back to where it should have been as a real paints and coatings giant worldwide. You see part of our purpose statement here on this chart, but I just want to highlight some of the words. We are fortunate in an industry because our products not only have a technical, functional role, but they also can inspire. Getting something from gray metallic to something that is much more vivid is definitely a transformation of the object that's being coated. It has a positive impact on life environment. We have plenty of examples where the engagement, the mood gets much better if things are really painted in the right way. We offer, of course, protection for expensive assets. And last but not least, we can do that increasingly in a much more sustainable and innovative way. A couple of critical tones I have to give to our industry, however. I've been about 20 years involved in the paints and coatings industry. In fact, I started in the paints and coatings industry in October 1999. My career in paints and coatings is maybe a little bit untypical because if you look at it, it was not 20 years in paints and coatings. It was about 4 years in paints and coatings, stepping out in the DuPont company to another business, coming back after about 4 years to be again almost 4 years in paints and coatings, stepping out for about 4 years, and then coming back in to do something in paints and coatings. The interesting thing is that it gives you a bit of a time warp, because after those years when I came back, in most cases the only thing that had really changed in our industry was that more people had wrinkles and had gray hair. But for the offerings we did, not much had changed. Our great claim to fame in the industry worldwide is mostly for the industry to move from solvents to waterborne. And it feels like then all the warriors were very tired and not much less has happened. Now, I'm not going to lose the audience because sure, there has been lots of advantage in resin technology, there has been lots of advantages in other areas. But if we're really honest to ourselves, the paints and coatings industry has made little steps instead of big steps that are happening in some of the other industries. So for us at AKZONOBEL, it's a real challenge to see how we can use innovation and collaboration to try to catch up with the speed of the societies and technology around us. So that goes us to innovation. And the big word that we use in our company when we talk about innovation is to go beyond what the industry and we ourselves have been delivering so far. And therefore you will notice that increasingly we are putting innovation at the heart of everything we do. AKZONOBEL has about 3,000 scientists, so it is not that we're not spending enough time and effort on trying to find new things. The innovation is obviously not limited to new products, although we're pretty proud of the products that we launch. It also includes process innovations in our plants, service innovations either with our suppliers or with our customers, and completely new ways of thinking in relationships with our partners in the whole value chain. The area where we are trying to keep up with is the whole digital transformation. We feel at AKZONOBEL that we're holding pace with the transformation, but that we can do much better and are actually not using the complete advantages of what that could deliver, and therefore that is obviously a big focus for us. The other element of innovation is to go beyond expectation, as we said. Beyond expectation of what a paint and a coating can deliver. Let me be a little bit cynical for our industry when I talk about decorative coatings. If you take 3 or 4 steps backwards, it is a bit of a complicated process if you compare it with what the outcome is. If somebody here in the room wants to redecorate their house, they have to go to the whole misery of picking colors. They have to find the right painter to do it. In many places in the world, they have to go with a painter to buy the paint to make sure that what's in the can is really the paint that they pay for. The house is a mess for a couple of weeks. And in the end, you have the same walls that just look cleaner, have a different color, but frankly, not much else has happened than that. And the functionality is relatively limited on what that coating brings, except a fresh coat of paint on your walls. So at AKZONOBEL, we talked about, instead of capturing the realities like the old painters on the artists, instead of just preserving the assets, is there more functionality that you can put in? And clearly, functionality we try to put in collectively as an industry in our products. Anti-graffiti is a clear element. The anti-fogging coatings, anti-scratch, anti-fouling, etc. So we're definitely in many of the industries trying to put more functionality in after all the work has happened to coat the walls or the substrates that we're trying to give a different color. AKZONOBEL pioneered in China an anti-formaldehyde coating that absorbs unwanted volatile ingredients from the air. It basically cleans the air inside in the home to compensate for outdoor air pollution. We launched the product about a year ago, 18 months ago in China under the brand name Dulux Forest Breath, and it became the biggest selling item in our portfolio of all times. Very nice pricing point, but an enormous demand from consumers to get it. So that, of course, makes you wonder what is the next frontier we can offer in a market like decorative coatings. Is it looking at insect repellent? Is it looking at light capturing? Is it changing color? Is there energy and insulation benefits that it basically can bring? Those are the frontiers we are looking at increasingly in our company to really increase what you offer with the coatings that we now are selling quite successfully. Beyond imagination in innovation. If I go back to 20 years ago, and I had spent most of my time in the vehicle refinish business back then, the color books, the color matching books was the big item. The big item back then was to see how many books do we have to order with color chips so that we still have enough of them at the end of the cycle. It became more a guess or a gamble on how many of these books you needed, because once you made them, it was very difficult and very expensive to make more books later on to do so. That seems now like the Middle Ages. The digitization of our industry is in full swing. We feel as a company that we are holding pace, although maybe not running ahead. But in our industry, many companies are obviously falling very much behind in what the digital transformation is happening. Today, for us, most of the color that we supply, or the color information, is not only supplied digitally, but is totally put into the cloud. It's also a better way of making sure that the first time right color is delivered in real time. And some of you may be familiar with tools like our own visualizer that let you see on your iPad the room in the color that you try to bring before you even take the brush out of the pocket. We also are very intrigued by looking at how we can use big data. Any paint company today is a collection of data, sometimes not very well stored, but if you could store it very well, you have so much information around thousands of shipping points, thousands of demands for colors, thousands of, in fact, in some of the maintenance contracts we have, thousands of information points around where objects have been, that you can use this much more to your advantage as a business model. In fact, we're pioneering today a technology which is called dry docks. It's in our marine industry, where together with our marine coatings, where we are the #1 worldwide, we also offer service and maintenance contracts. As a result, we really have to track on thousands of ships where they have been, where they're going to, which seas they have been in, to try to correlate what the corrosion has been and therefore what the maintenance cycle should be. A part of our breakout innovation team got the idea to say, well, since we know where all these ships have been and which seas they have been in, we can probably correlate it to which species are really stuck to the side of the ship and see if we can organize this in a way that harbors around the world can have a prediction when a ship comes in what kind of invasive species are coming into the harbor and therefore can do a lot of damage to the local ecosystems. We're piloting this right now, and I have to say it is quite a big success. A lot of harbors, ports around the world are extremely interested to know in advance when a ship comes in what kind of treatment, what kind of risks that are really coming behind that ship into the harbor. Just one tiny example on where the use of data can really drive a new business model. I would of course be amiss in innovation not to talk about sustainability. And I would say in the beyond category, this is probably in the category beyond generations. We hear it all the time. Once we sit in front of a television or we're reading a magazine, we are very much aware of our responsibility for the next generations. But unfortunately, like in all industries, not all of us are living up to that in the same way as it should be. We are part with our industry of an ecosystem, and in fact, more and more we see that there is a craving at sophisticated customers to go to a truly economical value chain. For us today, we are in our energy, for example, 100% renewable energy based in our European sites. We have pledged that we will be carbon neutral by 2040, and I think we're going to be there ahead of time. And if I look over the last 2-3 years, we are at a run rate of reducing our wastewater consumption by about 5% a year, and our energy consumption is going down by about 4% a year. So we're really on our way to get our footprint as little as possible. In fact, we went to a no-nonsense approach for sustainability. People in my organization know that I'm extremely have an allergy for brochures that show kids running in fields chasing butterflies and call that sustainability. We are a paint company, so it has to be demonstratable what we do. So our sustainability effort we split in 2 work streams. One is what do our products deliver? We call that eco premium. What do they do better than competition? Are they cleaner, less footprint? What do they enable the customer to do in their value chain? And the second big pathway for our sustainability is our own footprint. It's what we call resource productivity. It's less energy consumption, less wastewater production, consumption, etc. In the last 12 years, AKZONOBEL has been in the top rankings of the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. And in fact, this year we took the somewhat bold move, together with 3 other European chemical companies, to step out of the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, because we felt it was not helping us anymore to do better, because as you often have with indexes, the ratings and the whole data gathering was based more on the middle of the group and not so much at the leading companies. So we stepped out, and with a number of companies we're developing much more forward-thinking metrics to drive improvement further in our portfolio. Sustainability is a business. You know sometimes that the saying is that life and death is something you do when you're bored, that you talk about existential problems when you really have nothing else to do. I would say we've basically came to a point where that is not correct. For us, sustainability is really a key driver of our business model that we have. It is not an attribute where we decide we're going to launch a product and then see if we can do it sustainable. It is really the other way around. It is part of the design of the products. And by the way, today if you launch a new product and it doesn't have a sustainability effort, it is a little bit of a shot in the dark that you should not be doing, because you know you're going to be criticized for it pretty quickly. Sustainability in our company has a relatively broad definition. Of course, it goes to customer benefits. What does it help our customers to do on sustainability, be it more circular, be it more recycling, being less footprint, etc., in their processes? The second is societal benefits. I'll talk about it later, but as a large company like AKZONOBEL, we feel we have a responsibility to make sure that we bring the societal benefits with our products. We talked about the environmental benefits, but increasingly, if you do it smart on the way that you use new products and the way that you use your resources, it also brings significant business benefits. And as I said before, we really want to bring it as a no-nonsense dynamic. If you look at our sustainability group in our company, they're not people walking around in woolen sweaters and sandals. They are business people who look at how can they adjust our offerings to create more value for our customers, but yes, also for us. That's why we adapted the slogan, People, Planet, Profit. We actually made it into People, Planet, Paint. And that's basically the motto for our processes. One element I would like to stress is our AKZONOBEL Cares initiatives. And the reason why I want to stress it is that the hub, the origin and the driver of those initiatives is basically our Brazilian organization with their efforts of Tudo Decor. A very nice, a very warm, but also a very well thought out method of making sure that our paint can bring an improvement, be it a modest improvement, but an improvement in the lives of many people. In 2018, there's 65 Let's Color activities, which is our international branding for it, and Tudo Decor here. It is active in 23 countries. We have about 1,500 AKZONOBEL volunteers who go out and paint, help out to get these projects becoming a fact. And I have to say, I'm one of those 1,500. It's about 200,000 liters of paint that we donate in these projects. And frankly, there are millions of people benefiting. And we would not be the technological nerds if we didn't track exactly what the engagement increasements are, what the happiness factor is, etc., which what we bring with our paint. There's also, by the way, I can recommend it for any paint supplier, because as an anecdote, we had launched a completely new waterborne wood trim in Europe that was getting rave reviews. I was part of a team who was painting an orphanage with the product, and together with the CTO, is a real story with our chief technology officer. He and I were not allowed to paint the walls. We were painting the wooden furniture with the new waterborne wood trim. And we figured out while we were discussing things that we had a lot of dripping going on. And first we were joking with one another that obviously we were spending too much time in the office and not enough painting with our paint. But it turned out that the other group who was also painting furniture had the same problem. And it turned out that we had to reformulate our product because it just gave too much dripping issues. So a good advice for everybody here in the room, if you have some paint, maybe try it yourself. It may correct yourself in your brochures and it may give you a better product afterwards. Let me go to how we look at collaboration in the company, because I also want to come to the open innovation situation. If you look at what we do at AKZONOBEL, we have 3,000 scientists, we have thousands of people in daily contact with either our suppliers or our customers, so you might actually come to the conclusion that we really know what we're doing. But things are moving fast. The world is getting increasingly complex, the world is moving increasingly fast, and the solution for a problem in a colder, rainy country like the Netherlands may not exactly be the best solution for a customer deep in the Amazon in Brazil. So the feeling is we can't do everything by ourselves. And that's basically the whole content of what is part of our internal motto, the winning together. Winning together is with suppliers, it is winning together with customers, but it's definitely also winning together with everything else that is out there to make us win and adopt new ideas faster. So open innovation, I'll come back to that, because the customer collaboration is something we probably all do daily, be the supplier from products with ourselves, and we do it with our customers. The other element is supplier collaboration, often a bit misused as an euphemism for a different kind of pricing negotiation. But in the end, it is a collaboration on how can we get the technology adjusted to what we want to do. Last but not least, you have the whole sustainability strategy that comes along in what the offering is. But all in all, it really goes back to the whole open innovation. Let me just talk a little bit about those 4 elements that I just described. The customer collaboration is probably well known to everybody who is in a company here. That's how you do your business. You go to your customers, and it's basically the modern day version of courtship, where you try to get your customer to buy from you and not from somebody else. So of course, in this, the how we do it, you look indeed at what is our product range. You look at, in certain businesses, how can you help them with the store layout. You look at the communications, how can you keep your customers informed, exchanging experience from other parts of the world, what are the services that you can offer them, and in the end, you do your result tracking, which is basically, most cases, it has to do with profit and with volumes and revenue that you ship. The second element I talked about is supplier collaboration. Supplier collaboration is in many cases a continuous and sustainable improvement set, where you keep having the dialogue on what your raw materials, what the services you get, how they can help you better to serve your own customers. At AKZONOBEL, it's pretty clear that a leading performance for our company can only come from having leading performance from our suppliers. The company was, before 2017, very decentralized. In our company of AKZONOBEL, there was a great pride that we let the Dutch do for the Dutch what they know best. We let the Russians do for the Russians what they do best. We let the Brazilians do for the Brazilians what do they best. They had their own labs, and everybody was happy ever after. As things are so complex and changing so fast, one of the big activities that we have in the company is to try to find a balance by being local experts but having a global toolbox. In a market like Brazil, for example, it is probably by now the case that 2/3 of what's being introduced, if not more, 80% probably of what's being introduced in Brazil comes out of a global toolbox, where somebody in Vietnam might have been developing this, or somebody in China, or somebody in the Netherlands, and it gets used in Brazil, and vice versa. New technology in Brazil becomes part of the global toolbox, and if it's around tropical climate, obviously somebody in France will not have a big market for that. But again, Vietnam, Indonesia, other countries where we have big market share may actually contribute from that. So it is pretty exciting to have this decentralized, having the doors open, and have really this fantastic Lego box of building blocks available for every country. And supplier collaboration also plays a big role, where we've seen that being decentralized, our conversations were too local, and we're not always focusing on what do we need across the globe. So that's supplier collaboration. The other element where we embarked on in full force is open innovation. We had our first big event of what we call Paint the Future, which is our tagline for everything we do on open innovation. I've already talked about the fact that we have 3,000 researchers, and they do an excellent job. So all that I'm saying now is not a criticism on our own research people. But for everybody here in the company, you know that if one of your research people comes with an off-the-wall idea, something that's extremely off-the-wall, we all go back to spreadsheets. We want to know what the business case is. We put it in a stage gate process, and we decide, okay, we give you 3 months to come up with a Nobel Prize winning idea. You get X 100,000 euros to do it, and if it isn't, then we are bold warriors. We will stop that process because it's just a waste of money. That's just how life is. Otherwise, a company would go bankrupt very quickly if you didn't do that. So the question was, well, how can we tap into what I call this gigantic laboratory outside our doors? People at universities, people in startup companies, people at suppliers, customers, etc. All those ideas out there. People who often have been working 10 or 15 years at the university to perfect the technology. How can we tap into that? Because the reality is, for some of those technologies, if one of our employees had been working 10, 15 years on that, that employee would probably never have the time to finish the product because we would see it as a waste of money. So what we did set up is a very unique formula for open innovation with startups, where we gave challenges, and you see what we did in the original startup. You see some of the areas of challenge that we give. Through social media, we had a very effective campaign to get participants to come in. And to give you some of the data, we had in total 250 startups applying. honestly, in the coatings industry, I had thought maybe we get 30 or 40 people. We had 250 submissions coming in. We had about 160 submissions that were in the end seen as very useful. And then in the end, we invited 21 startups to Amsterdam for a 3-day event where they could pitch their ideas. We had our own people, we had external people in to really look at how are they applicable. First of all, for us, it was an enormous treasure chest of ideas that came to us. We really got into the ecosystem of academia, startups, etc., to see what's happening. And then we didn't just want to do it because people like myself who are in their 50s wanted to look hip, but we really wanted to see how can we turn this into reality. And this is where we are. You see the happy winners. You would also see that the happy winners tended to be in a different age category. But I want to point out that the age or the image of a startup was really corrected pretty much to this whole process. A startup, yes, could have been 2-3 people from Imperial College in London who just graduated and were trying to get an idea commercial, but there were equally the 70-year-old professor from MIT who had been working on a bacteria-based system to develop colorants, etc. So the whole gamut was really present. These were the winners, although the winning was not that important. It was the participation and getting to know for us that whole ecosystem and what was out there. But these were the winners, and just to give some ideas, you have here SAS Nanotechnologies was a complete revolutionary way to use nanotechnology in corrosion protection. And in fact, we believe, we have now the business agreement with them, that if we can put this into practice, we can bring superior corrosion protection, for example, in the marine and protective area, superior protection at about 1/3 of the cost. Interface polymers that is mentioned here was a pretty revolutionary resin blockchain technology that they brought forward, which in fact our own resin people thought that couldn't be done. And that opens up the opportunity for really looking at different designs of resins and therefore a different design of paints. And then the other one, Apelix, interesting, it's around drone technology, how to paint substrates with drones. You would say it's not a big deal, you put a pot of paint on a drone and there you go. It turns out that it is an extremely complicated process. If you want to really, with a spray gun, paint an object and then have to see in corners what is the action, reaction, how do you keep this drone in the right place, etc. High big data aerodynamics that's behind it, but extremely interesting if you want to do repair and maintenance in spots that are very difficult to reach. This is just one of the areas. We made sure that we have all these agreements in place, and obviously it gave us the desire to do more. Because Paint the Future is for us really the start of a whole ecosystem. I call it indeed, as I said, connecting with the big laboratory on the outside, and in a humble way trying to connect in the great ideas that already are out there. It is around entrepreneurship, internal, but it's also around collaborating as a real must to compete and to stay ahead. And I go back to the original statement I did at the very beginning. If our business really wants to get out of the incremental changes, we really have to go to much more fundamental, in-depth, and much more creativity, innovation, and collaboration to get there. And definitely in our company, we see that as a must to deliver. The next step for Paint the Future in our startup, we made a team who is really very into that. We brought people in from that startup industry to lead this event. It is basically accelerating, as I said, with academia. We also want to have an event, the first event in the latter part of this year with our global suppliers. It's probably going to be held in the Netherlands. Really look with suppliers, what do we want to have, how can we work differently together so that a supplier knows what we need and therefore can design in that direction. And we also want to go to regional startups before we go in 2021 to another version of a global startup. What we've also noticed, by the way, with the regional startups, that we had some applications from China and from Japan, for example, but that the language barrier or maybe the cultural barrier was too big. So we felt we probably have to take the initiative there so that we really can see what the ideas are that alive. And last but not least, and this is kind of an announcement, we also will have our first regional Paint the Future event, startup event here in Brazil. It's the first one outside of the Netherlands, to really get all this microcosm of people with great ideas and great technology implied in our organization. And it really was also clear that as soon as the initiative took place, that Daniel's Brazilian organization was the first one to knock on the door and very eager to drive the changes and get on board with that. So for us, in a nutshell, as a big company and a big player in paints and coatings, for us, it is the continuing struggle not to fall asleep at the steering wheel. At AKZONOBEL today, now that we are shamelessly all about paint, we really look a lot at the internal processes. So how do we get it from a decentralized giant to a central-driven giant? And how can we bring more innovation in? How can we get more collaboration in, be it in our traditional value chain, but definitely also in the open innovation. So more to come, and thanks for listening.
Agradecemos ao Thierry. Ainda temos um pouquinho de tempo para perguntas. Vamos recolher perguntas por escrito. Na verdade, serão 2 ou 3, que é o tempo suficiente. As assistentes de palco poderão receber perguntas se alguém quiser fazê-las. Eu gostaria de fazer uma pergunta primeiro. Já vim preparado. Vou fazer em inglês para ficar mais fácil para o Thierry. Thierry, how do you see the prospects for Latin America, which already represents 9% of AKZONOBEL's business in paints?
Yeah, well, I think I would be spending a week here as I do regularly if I didn't see the importance of Latin America. It is obviously a big continent. Lots of opportunity to do things. It's also still a relatively fragmented market, I would say. If you look at what we call the paint market and the things that we and probably the bigger players here are tracking, we typically look at about 60% of the market, and then there's 40%, which is a lot of smaller local producers, etc. So in that sense, it's a big opportunity. It's also increasingly a sophisticated market where you have products that are being developed here, which are frankly easily used elsewhere in the world because they're very good there. The thing that we always have to get used to in Latin America is, of course, the macroeconomics that go up and down. For us cynical Europeans who more or less have given up any hope on governments anyway, it is sometimes bizarre to see that an election in a country can really swing it from left to right. It's also seen very emotional because it's going to be good, it's going to be bad. The currency effects is always something in a tranquil country in Europe where you say this makes no sense. But in a way, it has given enormous vibrancy to our organization. So for us, Latin America is extremely important. It is very healthy markets for us. There is a nice growth and development. The one area for us is a constant discussion around can we do it for more geographic expansion.
Wow, thank you. No more questions? Thierry, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you.
And we are honored.
Thank you
with
very
your
much.
speech.
Thank
Okay,
you. Thank you.
guys, big. É para a posteridade, não é sempre que nós temos o Thierry aqui.
Muito obrigado a todos. Encerrando esta sessão, informo que no lado de fora temos um café servido para todos e às 11 horas teremos a abertura da nossa exposição. O congresso continua neste mesmo andar, a exposição descendo as escadas rolantes. Muito obrigado a todos e uma boa ABRAFATI 2019.